As President Trump prepares to host congressional leaders in less than 2 hours to discuss the looming threat of a government shutdown, he continues publicly pushing against Democrats. Speaking to NBC News on the phone Sunday, he said, quote, "The problem we have with the shutdown is that Democrats want to do all health care for illegal immigrants, people that came in, many of whom are criminal, that we are removing from our country. We're not going to do that. In addition, they want open borders, which we are not doing." Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Jason Crow from Colorado. Congressman, welcome. Good to see you. How do you counter that messaging from the president?
Well, it's simply a lie, Alex. This is not at all what's at debate here. What's at debate is the slashing of health care for millions of Americans, the purging of our critical government services and our civil servants that are doing things that are important for everyday Americans, from our air traffic safety to food inspections and safety to access to our public lands and our national parks, the political purging of our military, deployments of federal troops into cities and states that don't want those deployments as shows of force. I and others are simply not going to vote to fund those things. We've been very clear about that. I have over 150,000 constituents whose health care is at severe risk of being slashed. The rest of the people in the state of Colorado, around the country as well, are looking at 30% premium increases. We're not going to do that. So the Republicans have full control of the government. They control every branch. We've told them what our limits are, and now they have to reach out to us to negotiate.
How confident are you, though, that the American public, and particularly federal employees, will see any potential shutdown as not being the fault of Democrats?
I'm very confident of that because they see what's happening. They see the fact that Republicans control every branch of government. Democrats have repeatedly said, open up the door, start negotiations, start discussing this with us. They have actually literally shut the door and have refused to negotiate and even do the basic things that we should be doing on the verge of a shutdown like this. So, that is very clear for America to see.
Let me back up what you just said there, because Speaker Mike Johnson told House Republicans on a conference call just this morning he does not plan to bring the House back into session until next week. And that is according to two GOP sources on that call, who also added that several rank and file members, they pushed back on the idea of keeping members out of town until next week. So what does that tell you about where this could be heading? And is there any fracturing within the Republican Party about this?
Yeah, this is a perfect example. I mean, all the things that should be happening, negotiations, discussions, meeting with President Trump, actually us being in town to vote, the Republicans have canceled all of those things. And it's such a unbelievable, I'm almost speechless. I've never been in a situation where on the verge of a government shutdown, the party in power, the Republicans, have literally canceled votes. And not brought Congress back into session for us to negotiate, to have discussions, and to be ready if there is a deal struck to vote. They've canceled it. And one of the reasons they've actually canceled it is because we have a new member that's about to be sworn in, Adelita Gravelva from Arizona. And Adelita will be the 218th signature on what's called a discharge petition, which will force a vote on the release of the Epstein files. So what's actually happening here is Mike Johnson and the Republicans are preventing us from coming in, negotiating, voting to keep the government open because they don't want us to vote on the release of the Epstein files because of the cover-up that they are pursuing for Donald Trump.
So let's look at the nitty-gritty here and how this really trickles down to people and their livelihood, because according to Colorado Public Radio, your state has 41,000 federal employees, 36,000 active duty members of the military. They will not get a paycheck during a government shutdown. Then you add to that the threat from the OMB of a permanent reduction in force instead of just the usual furloughs. And here's how Speaker Johnson views it. Take a listen.
It's a burden that can easily be avoided if the Democrats will just apply common sense and do the right thing. But if they force that, the results are going to be on them, not on Republicans.
Now, hang on, because the president said that he hopes that does. Joining us now, Jake Sherman, co-founder of Punchbowl News and an MSNBC political contributor. Former Republican Congressman from Florida, Carlos Curbelo, an MSNBC political analyst. And Tyler Pager, New York Times White House correspondent. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. So, Jake, you laid out in this morning's Punchbowl newsletter what each side will be looking for in today's meeting. So walk us through their goals.
Yeah, listen, the Republicans have passed a bill, a clean funding bill, which extends government funding until November 21st. And they just want to keep Trump from negotiating or diving into any negotiations with Democrats, which I think at this point seems unlikely that Trump would do that. That's number one. What Democrats want effectively is three things. They want to roll back the health care cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That's the Republicans' big legislative achievement that they got through earlier this year. They want to stop the president from unilaterally rescinding money from the federal budget. And perhaps most importantly, there are a bunch of tax credits, enhanced tax credits for Obamacare that come up, that expire at the end of the year. These tax credits were put in place or enhanced during COVID, and they want they want to renew those as part of this government funding bill. So I don't see, as you kind of noted in your intro of all those clips, I mean, I don't see an obvious way out at this point. The House isn't even in session, Alex, this week until next week. So I don't see any way of avoiding a government shutdown in just 36 or so hours.
Yeah, but aren't the Democrats in the House being called back tonight?
Yeah, but they can't do anything. Republicans are in charge of the chamber, so they need Republicans here to conduct any business. So there's nothing that the House will do, at least from what I could tell this week.
So, Carlos, you have experience in this. You have lived this kind of scenario while serving in Congress during a shutdown. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries was asked this morning if Democrats would be open to a compromise. Listen to what he said.
We've said from the beginning that we're willing to find a bipartisan path forward, and our line in the sand is the bill has to help everyday Americans, not hurt everyday Americans.
So President Trump calls Democrats' funding demands unreasonable. But with the message you just heard, does it put pressure on today's meeting to be substantive over performative?
Look, I think maybe the Democrats get a commitment from the White House, from House and Senate Republican leadership, that they will take up this ACA tax credit issue. But I do think this is still an uphill climb for Democrats. Typically, the party that denies the votes to keep the government open, especially in a case like this where Republicans are asking just for a simple extension of 7 weeks, typically that party that withhold votes gets punished in the public square, especially with swing voters, with independent-minded voters. And Democrats are in a trap because their base wants them to fight. The base wants them to shut down the government. But I don't see a clear path forward. Maybe if they settle for a commitment that there will be a debate on these ACA tax credits, that might be enough. But if that's not enough, I don't see how we get out of this in less than a week.
Congresswoman, back in March, Schumer essentially folded. He got no concessions from the GOP. Democrats were outraged. Has the calculus changed this time around in those few short months? And are Democrats now united in opposition this time?
I think what Democrats are united in is that they want to see that Americans' health care costs don't go up. I mean, the difference between now and March is that in that 6 or 7 week short-term period, Americans have to make really important financial health care decisions about selecting their health care plans leading up to the December 7th deadline. And so there is a real consequence of not understanding what's going to happen with respect to those subsidies for American families, apart from the fact that the Medicaid cuts really are unsustainable. And so I think on this issue where Democrats have differed is that they're really fighting over something that hits Americans' pockets. They understand it. They look every year to see what their health care costs are. And I agree with Brendan. I didn't support shutdowns when I was in government, whether they were going to be engineered by Democrats or Republicans. But the fact is that the president has not shown a willingness to adhere to appropriations that have funded the government. He has not shown the inclination to respect the process by having a negotiation between Democrats and Republicans. And so I think Democrats' view about this is that 300,000 federal workers are going to lose their jobs at the end of the year, that healthcare costs are going to skyrocket, that that's unsustainable, that costs are going up for Americans. And so if there's not a time to fight, I don't know when that time would be.
It sounds like Democrats don't want those results that you just spoke of, but That's what the Republicans are threatening. So why not just let it happen is one question. The thing that we're hearing, though, I want to play some of the sound we're hearing from the leaders as they are doing the finger pointing over who would pay the political price for a shutdown. Here's a sample.
They're trying to intimidate the American people and us. God forbid the Republicans shut the government down. The American people will know it's on their back.
He's going to tell Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries to stop playing political games. It's a burden that can easily be avoided if the Democrats will just apply common sense and do the right thing. But if they force that, the results are going to be on them, not on Republicans.
I want to come back to you, Congresswoman, because you were there for the shutdown during President Obama's second term. Which party takes blame during a shutdown? Is it the party in power or the minority?
Well, I think in this instance, that's actually too simplistic. Here, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And so for them to put the blame on Democrats is just not, it's laughable even. They control government. If they don't want government to shut down, then their obligation as leaders and as the majority party is to sit down with Democrats and to negotiate a solution.
One thing we need to make really clear, Trump is going to throw anyone and everyone under the bus when inevitably this scheme fails. And it'll fail in one of two ways. Either he has to compromise with Democrats and give up his attack on the poor, at least mitigate it, and he's going to hate that because he wants to see the 99% suffer, including his own voters. He hates his own voters. He despises the working class, whether they're red or blue, purple, no party at all. Socialist, right wing, doesn't matter. Hates them all. But he's also going to be mad if a deal doesn't get done and there's a shutdown, because with them controlling all three branches, he can spin it how he wants. The Republicans are going to take the lion's share of the blame because they deserve to. And so somebody like MAGA Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson, is going to take the hits here. And he's going to be the one that gets pincered because moderates in the caucus are going to worry that kowtowing to the far right is going to make a 2026 re-election already harder than it's going to be. And then the MAGA base, the far right base, the hyper, we don't want any budget. I always vote against the debt ceiling increase no matter what type Republican. They're going to be mad at Johnson and sort of do what Matt Gaetz did to what was his name? Kevin McCarthy. Remember him? He disappeared from my mind until this moment. Kevin McCarthy was turfed because a few MAGA nut jobs decided to throw him out, and then they had a vote, and he narrowly lost because they had enough to trigger the vote. And so Mike Johnson's in real danger here because Trump will not take responsibility. Even though his government has come out and said, we're looking to make a crisis here. Therefore, proving to the American people that if a shutdown happens, it's only happening with one, the party that controls all three branches, and two, because that party that controls all three branches wants to use this moment as an excuse to do Doge Part 2, to do what they did with their first wave of Doge back earlier this year. And then remember, Elon basically got kicked out. And, now they're going to bring back the second part of it and using the shutdown as the kind of venue to do that. Trump will look for a sacrifice, and it could be MAGA Mike.